The large meeting room fell silent as Ambassador Richard Clark stood up. The peace talks had gone on for 3 years. Representatives from 27 alien species watched as the human gathered his papers and closed his screen. "This meeting is over," Richard said. His voice was calm but firm. "Earth will no longer participate in these talks." No one moved. The Zoraxian delegate, with his blue skin and 4 eyes, blinked rapidly in confusion. The insect-like Kreen clicked their mandibles. The floating mist beings darkened from pale blue to stormy gray. "Ambassador Clark, please explain," said Zextra, the head of the Galactic Concord. "We were making progress." Richard looked at the alien but did not smile. "My government's decision is final. The human delegation is leaving immediately." With those words, the 12 human representatives stood up together. They had practiced this moment. No one spoke as they filed out of the grand chamber. The doors closed behind them with a soft hiss. In the hallway, Susan Miller moved quickly to catch up with Richard. As his chief aide, she knew him better than anyone else in the delegation. "Sir, the aliens are panicking already," she whispered. "My screen is lighting up with messages." Richard nodded, but kept walking. That was expected. The team boarded their shuttle in perfect order. Only when the doors sealed and the engines hummed to life did Richard sink into his seat. He looked tired. 3 years wasted," said George Palmer, the trade negotiator. "All that work for nothing." "Not wasted," Richard replied. "And not for nothing." Susan sat next to him. "The orders from Earth came suddenly. The timing feels wrong." Richard looked around at his team. These were people he trusted. They deserved some explanation. "Central Command had their reasons," he said quietly. "I can't share everything, but this isn't a failure. It's a strategic decision." The shuttle lifted off from the Galactic Concord station. Through the windows, they could see emergency lights flashing. Ships were moving in unusual patterns. News was spreading fast. Across the galaxy, the reaction was immediate. On the trading world of Nexus Prime, alien merchants rushed to sell human goods, fearing sanctions. On military planets, defense grids activated. The peaceful Lorians began evacuating their colonies near human space. Everyone remembered the Krell conflict. Humans had been pushed too far and responded with shocking force. The war lasted just 8 standard days, but the Krell never recovered. "Sir, the Quarians are requesting direct communication," Susan said, checking her screen. "They seem worried." The Quarians had been Earth's first and most loyal allies. Richard felt a twinge of guilt. "Tell them I'm unavailable until we reach Earth," he replied. On the Zoraxian homeworld, Ambassador Krellvor rushed into an emergency council meeting. "The humans have abandoned diplomacy," he announced to the gathered leaders. "We must prepare for all possibilities." The Zoraxian Supreme, a female with elaborate head crests, leaned forward. "Have you established communication with Earth?" "No, Supreme. They are not responding to any messages." Fear spread across the council chamber. Humans were unpredictable. When they chose violence, they were terrifyingly effective. As the human shuttle entered hyperspace, Richard received a secure message. It was for his eyes only. After reading it, he deleted it immediately. Susan noticed his expression change. "Bad news. The UES Challenger has left Earth orbit," he said quietly. "It's heading toward the outer rim." Susan's eyes widened. The Challenger was Earth's newest and most powerful ship. Its deployment meant something big was happening. As the shuttle sped toward Earth, 27 species across the galaxy prepared for what they believed was coming: war with humanity. What they didn't know was that humans were preparing too, but not for the reason everyone feared. Beyond the outer rim, something ancient was waking up, and only humanity knew it was coming. 1 week after the humans left the peace talks, fear had spread across the galaxy. On the Quarian homeworld, their High Council met in an emergency session that had lasted for 3 days. "The humans betrayed us," said Elder Zara, her gray skin pale with stress. We shared technology, resources, even opened our colonies to them. Prime Counselor Vex shook his head. We must not jump to conclusions. Humans have been reliable allies for 50 years. Then why did they cut all communication channels? Asked another council member. No one had an answer. The Quarians had sent 15 messages to Earth. None received a reply. Meanwhile, on the Xeraxian border stations, military vessels gathered in large numbers. Their curved ships formed defensive lines, weapons powered but not active. They watched human space with growing unease. On Earth, most citizens remained unaware of the diplomatic crisis. News feeds showed normal events, sports, entertainment, weather. But in the military bases across the planet, activity had increased dramatically. Captain Olivia Bennett stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, reading her new orders for the 5th time. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Deploy the entire 7th Fleet to these coordinates, she read aloud to her second-in-command, Lieutenant Frank Martinez. Maintain communications blackout. Prepare for extended operations. Frank looked at the star map. That's the edge of human space, near the outer rim. There's nothing out there. These orders come directly from Admiral Howard himself, Olivia replied. We leave in 6 hours. Across Earth's major cities, Henry Douglas chased a story no one else seemed to notice. As a veteran journalist, he had contacts in government and military circles. Something big was happening, but no official would talk to him. Henry sat in a small coffee shop, waiting. His contact was late. Just as he was about to leave, a woman in a plain gray coat sat across from him. You're asking dangerous questions, she said quietly. Henry leaned forward. Why did we really leave the peace talks? The woman slid a small data chip across the table. Look into the deep space mission from last year. The one that supposedly failed. Before Henry could ask more questions, she was gone. He pocketed the chip and left immediately. In the Galactic Concord station, an emergency council meeting had been called. Representatives from 23 species argued about what to do. We must send a unified message to Earth, said the green delegate, mandibles clicking nervously. No, countered the Xeraxian ambassador. We should prepare a defensive fleet. Humans respect strength. As they argued, new information arrived. The Pellerin deep space monitoring stations had detected unusual activity in human territory. Large ships were moving, shipyards were working at full capacity, and their planetary defense grid had been activated for the first time in 50 years. They are preparing for war, the Xeraxian ambassador declared. We must strike first. Back on Earth, in the highest security military facility under the North American continent, Admiral Gary Wilson addressed 30 top commanders. The room was sealed against any surveillance. What I'm about to tell you does not leave this room, he began. The officers sat straighter. Humanity didn't abandon the peace talks because we want war. We did it to save the galaxy. The room remained silent as he continued. 6 months ago, we detected something beyond the outer rim. Something ancient and terrible is waking up. If we had shared this at the peace talks, it would have caused galaxy-wide panic. He activated a holographic display showing a massive object moving through deep space. We need to prepare our defenses without alarming our allies or enemies. Sometimes, to protect everyone, you have to appear to be the villain. As he spoke, at the very edge of human space, a small scout ship emerged from the darkness beyond the rim. It was heavily damaged, trailing debris and radiation. Of its crew of 15, only Lieutenant Daniel Ross remained alive, barely conscious as automated systems guided the vessel home. He had seen what was coming, and it was worse than anyone imagined. Lieutenant Daniel Ross lay in the medical bay of Earth's orbital station. Machines beaked around him, monitoring his vital signs. His skin was pale, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He had not spoken since his return. 3 doctors worked around him while 2 armed guards stood at the door. No one entered or left without special clearance from Admiral Wilson. On Earth, Henry Douglas plugged the data chip into his secure computer. Files appeared on his screen. Classified reports about a deep space mission called Operation Lighthouse. The mission had sent 5 ships beyond the outer rim 1 year ago. According to official records, all ships were lost due to navigation errors. But the files told a different story. 4 ships were destroyed by something the reports called the Harvesters. Only 1 ship managed to send a warning message before contact was lost. Henry read the message again. They're waking up. Millions of them. If they reach populated space, nothing will survive. His hands trembled as he copied the files. This was bigger than any story he had ever pursued. Meanwhile, Captain Olivia Bennett's fleet reached its destination at the edge of human space. 27 warships formed a defensive line facing the darkness beyond the rim. All ships in position, reported Lieutenant Martinez. Defense systems at full power. Olivia nodded. Now we wait. Her orders were clear. Hold this position and stop anything coming from beyond the rim. But the orders didn't explain what they were expecting. Across the galaxy, tension increased. The Xeraxian Empire had moved 50 warships to their border with human space. Their commanders waited for orders to attack. In a secret meeting room on the neutral world of Centauri Prime, Ambassador Richard Clark met with representatives from 5 alien species. These were the ones he trusted most. "What I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room," Richard said. He activated a small device that showed images of massive ships moving through deep space. "This is what humanity is preparing for," he explained. "An ancient species that hibernates for thousands of years before waking to consume all life in their path." The aliens watched in horror as the recording showed one of these massive ships destroying an Earth vessel in seconds. "Why didn't you share this with the Galactic Council?" asked the Quarian representative. "Because panic would spread," Richard replied. "Some species would surrender immediately. Others would try to make deals with these harvesters. The galaxy would fracture before the fight even began." On the Xeraxian homeworld, their war council made a decision. "We will launch a preventative strike against the human outpost in the Proxima system," announced Supreme Commander Draz. "This will test their intentions." 3 Xeraxian battleships jumped into the Proxima system, weapons charged. They fired on the small human outpost, destroying its defense satellites. They expected a massive retaliation. Instead, the human forces pulled back, evacuating civilians but not engaging the Xeraxian ships. This confused everyone. If humans were preparing for war, why would they show restraint? Back on Earth, in the secure medical facility, Lieutenant Ross finally spoke. "They're coming," he whispered to the doctor beside him. "I watched them destroy my ship. They absorbed the energy from our weapons and grew stronger." Admiral Wilson entered the room. "Tell me everything you saw, Lieutenant." Ross's eyes widened with fear. "They're not just ships. They're alive. They feed on energy, any kind of energy, and they remember humanity from before." "Before when?" Wilson asked. "Before recorded history," Ross replied. "They called us the ones who burned their nest. They're coming specifically for Earth." As Ross spoke, deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures beyond the rim. They were moving towards civilized space at incredible speed. The clock was ticking. Humanity had perhaps 2 weeks before the first wave arrived. Admiral Wilson called an emergency meeting with Earth's leadership. Military commanders, political leaders, and scientific experts gathered in the underground command center. The room fell silent as Lieutenant Ross's debriefing video played on the main screen. "They call themselves the Void Harvesters," Ross explained, his voice weak but determined. "My ship encountered their scout vessels. They absorb energy and use it to wake more of their kind." The room remained silent as Ross described the destruction of his fellow crew members. The Harvesters had weapons unlike anything humans had seen before. "Why did they let you live?" asked the President of Earth. "To deliver a message," Ross replied. "They said, 'The children of the fire makers will burn first.' Scientists explained that ancient human records contained stories of sky demons that came from beyond the stars. These stories appeared in cultures across Earth thousands of years ago. The most common element in these stories was that humans had somehow defeated these beings using fire. Our ancestors might have encountered them before, one scientist said, and somehow drove them away. On the bridge of her ship, Captain Olivia Bennett received new orders. Her fleet would intercept the first wave of harvester vessels. "We're the first line of defense," she told her crew. "If we fail, they reach populated systems within days." Her officers looked nervous but determined. They had trained for many scenarios, but nothing like this. Across the galaxy, the Xeraxian Empire remained confused by the human response to their attack. Instead of retaliation, humans had simply withdrawn. The Xeraxian Supreme summoned her intelligence chief. "Why are the humans acting this way? They should have counterattacked." "We have intercepted strange communications," the intelligence chief replied. "Humans are moving all their forces to face the Outer Rim, not our territories." "The Outer Rim? There's nothing there." "That's what we thought." In his apartment on Earth, Henry Douglas received an unexpected visitor. A military officer arrived at his door. "Mr. Douglas, I'm Colonel Kevin Stewart. Instead of arresting you for possessing classified information, I've been ordered to bring you in." Henry was surprised. "Bring me in where?" "The world needs to know what's coming. But the message needs to be controlled to prevent panic. Admiral Wilson thinks you're the right person to tell this story." Meanwhile, Susan Miller coordinated a massive operation from Earth Command. Ships carrying weapons, supplies, and personnel streamed toward the defensive line. Every available vessel was being armed and prepared for battle. "We need to bring the aliens into this fight," she told Admiral Wilson. "We can't face this alone." Wilson nodded. "It's time to reveal everything." He sent a message to Ambassador Clark. "Tell them. All of it." In the Galactic Council chamber, Richard Clark stood before representatives of all 27 species. The room had been hostile toward him since humans left the peace talks. Now they fell silent as he activated a holographic display. "This is why humanity withdrew from negotiations," he said as images of the harvesters appeared. "An ancient species is awakening. They feed on energy and consume all life. They've caused extinction events before." Data and evidence streamed across the display. Records from multiple worlds showed similar historical events, periods where civilization simply vanished. "We didn't want to cause galaxy-wide panic," Richard explained. "So we made ourselves look like the villains while we prepared defenses." The council erupted in questions and shouts. Some accused humans of lying. Others demanded more information. As they argued, urgent news arrived. The first major harvester vessel had entered Galactic Council space. It was enormous, larger than any ship ever recorded. Smaller craft swarmed around it like insects, and it was heading directly toward the human defensive line. The Xeraxian ambassador approached Richard. "If this is true, you will need allies." "That's why I'm here," Richard replied. The Galactic Council chamber was filled with representatives from every major species. They watched the large display showing the first battle between human forces and the Void Harvesters. Captain Olivia Bennett's fleet faced the massive harvester vessel. Human ships looked tiny compared to the enormous alien craft. "All ships, attack pattern Delta," Olivia ordered. Her voice was steady despite her fear. "Target their energy collection points." Human ships moved with perfect coordination. They fired weapons that no alien in the room had seen before. Beams of blue energy struck the harvester vessel, causing parts of it to darken. "The humans were hiding their true weapons," whispered the Xeraxian ambassador. The harvester responded with tentacles of purple light that reached out to grab human ships. 3 smaller vessels were caught and drained of energy within seconds. "Evasive maneuvers," Olivia shouted. "Remember your training." On Earth, Susan Miller coordinated the second line of defense. Ships from across human space gathered near Jupiter. Engineers worked frantically to install new weapons on older vessels. "We need more time," she told Admiral Wilson. "The fleet can't hold them off alone." Wilson nodded grimly. "Captain Bennett knows her mission. Buy us time, whatever the cost." In the council chamber, Ambassador Richard Clark continued his explanation. "The void harvesters hibernate for thousands of years between feeding cycles. They consume all energy, from ships, planets, even stars. According to our research, they've caused at least 3 extinction events in galactic history." "Why should we believe humans?" asked the Marine representative. "You could be creating this threat to control us." Richard gestured to the battle on the screen. "Would we sacrifice our own ships for a lie?" As they watched, a human vessel deliberately rammed into one of the harvesters' vulnerable spots, causing a massive explosion. Both ships were destroyed. The room fell silent. The Quarian Prime Counselor stood. "What do you need from us?" "Everything," Richard replied simply. "Every ship, every weapon, every scientist who can help. This isn't just a human fight." In deep space, Lieutenant Frank Martinez piloted a small, fast scout ship around the main battle. His mission was to gather data on harvester weaknesses. "Captain, I'm sending you their energy patterns," he reported to Olivia. "They're vulnerable right after they fire their main weapon." Olivia studied the data. "All ships, concentrate fire on Section 4 when I give the signal." The massive harvester prepared to fire again. Its front section glowed with purple energy. "Wait," Olivia commanded. "Wait." The harvester released a beam of energy that cut through 2 human ships. "Now, all ships fire." Every human vessel fired at the same spot. The harvester's shell cracked, releasing a blinding light. The alien ship shuddered and began to drift. In the council chamber, aliens cheered as they watched the first harvester fall. "Don't celebrate yet," Richard warned. "Our deep space sensors detect hundreds more coming." On Earth, Henry Douglas broadcast the news to all human worlds. His face was serious as he explained the threat. "Today, humanity stands as the first line of defense against an enemy that threatens all life," he said. "But we do not stand alone." The broadcast showed images of Zoraxian ships joining the human fleet. The former enemies were now allies. In a secure facility, Lieutenant Ross worked with scientists to develop better weapons against the harvesters. "Their shells are made of a material that absorbs energy," he explained. "But there's a frequency that disrupts their systems." Susan Miller received the research results and immediately ordered all weapons to be modified. "We have a chance," she told Admiral Wilson. "But we need to get these upgrades to the front lines immediately." Wilson looked at the star map showing hundreds of harvester ships approaching. "Send everything we have to Captain Bennett," he ordered. "The real battle is just beginning." In deep space, Olivia Bennett watched as the damaged harvester sent out a signal. In response, 5 larger vessels emerged from the darkness beyond the rim. "All ships, regroup," she ordered. This was just their scout. Captain Olivia Bennett's fleet faced 5 massive harvester vessels. Her ships were damaged from the first battle, and they were outnumbered. "All ships formed defensive pattern Omega," she ordered. "Protect the wounded vessels." The human ships moved into a tight formation. Their shields glowed blue against the darkness of space. "Captain, we can't win this fight," Lieutenant Martinez said quietly. "We don't need to win," Olivia replied. "We just need to slow them down." As the harvesters approached, new signals appeared on their scanners. A fleet of Zoraxian warships dropped out of hyperspace beside them. "Human fleet, this is Commander Vex of the Zoraxian Empire," came a message. "We will fight with you." More ships arrived, sleek Quarian vessels, bulky ring carriers, and dozens of other alien craft. The hastily formed alliance gathered around the human fleet. On Earth, Admiral Wilson watched the gathering forces with relief. He turned to Susan Miller. "It worked. They're joining us." Susan nodded. "But will it be enough?" In the Jupiter shipyards, engineers worked frantically to outfit civilian vessels with weapons. Every ship that could fly was being prepared for battle. Richard Clark had returned to Earth to coordinate with alien ambassadors. They gathered in a large war room, planning strategy. The harvesters are heading directly toward Earth, Richard explained. Our scientists believe they remember humanity from an ancient encounter. The Quarian ambassador stepped forward. Our records show a similar species attacked our worlds 50,000 years ago. We lost that war and had to abandon our original homeworld. We all have stories like this in our oldest histories, added the Xeraxian representative. We just didn't connect them until now. Lieutenant Ross, still weak but determined, entered the war room with a team of scientists. We've analyzed the data from the first battle, he said. The harvesters use our energy weapons against us, but physical weapons, missiles, kinetic projectiles, they have no defense against those. Admiral Wilson immediately sent new battle plans to all ships. Switch to kinetic weapons only. Save energy weapons for emergency situations. In deep space, the combined fleet engaged the harvesters. Xeraxian ships launched missiles while human vessels fired solid projectiles. The Quarians provided shield support for the entire fleet. Olivia watched as their attacks caused actual damage to the harvester vessels. It's working, she exclaimed. All ships, continue attack pattern Delta with kinetic weapons only. The harvesters seemed confused by this change in tactics. Their energy-absorbing tentacles couldn't capture physical projectiles. For the first time, the massive aliens retreated. Henry Douglas reported this first victory to the people of Earth and across allied worlds. Crowds gathered to watch the news broadcasts. Hope began to replace fear. Today marks the first successful defense against the Void Harvesters, he reported. The combined fleet of 17 species fought together and forced the enemy to retreat. But Admiral Wilson knew the truth. This was only the beginning. They're regrouping, he told Earth's leaders. Our deep space sensors detect hundreds more harvester ships awakening beyond the rim. Susan Miller studied the sensor data. They're forming a massive attack force. Target trajectory: Earth. Why Earth specifically? Asked the president. Lieutenant Ross spoke up. They fear humans. Their communications mention the firemakers repeatedly. Something in our past terrifies them. Richard Clark consulted with alien historians. Together, they searched for clues in ancient records from across the galaxy. There are stories on a dozen worlds, he said. Tales of a species that defeated the Star Eaters with a terrible weapon. A weapon we might have forgotten, Susan added. In the combined fleet, Olivia Bennett received new orders. Her damaged ships would return to Earth for repairs while fresh vessels took their place on the front line. We bought some time, she told her crew. Now we need to find a way to win this war. As her ship turned toward Earth, the space behind them lit up with new energy signatures. The main harvester armada was on the move. The real battle for survival was about to begin. Earth became the center of frantic activity. Ships from 27 alien species arrived hourly, bringing weapons, supplies, and warriors. The former enemies now worked side by side with humans. Admiral Wilson stood in the main control room, watching the massive defense grid being built around Earth. Giant platforms with kinetic weapons formed a protective sphere around the planet. Will it be enough? Asked Susan Miller as she joined him. Wilson shook his head. Not against their full force. But it might buy us time to find another solution. Captain Olivia Bennett had been given a new mission. Her repaired ship, along with a small fleet of fast vessels, would slip behind enemy lines. Their goal: to find the Harvester's command ship and disable it. This is a one-way mission, Olivia told her volunteer crew. Our chances of returning are slim. Despite her warning, not a single crew member left. They understood what was at stake. Lieutenant Frank Martinez checked their special cargo, a new weapon designed based on Lieutenant Ross's research. It could disrupt the Harvester's coordination system, but had to be delivered directly to their command ship. If this works, the entire Harvester fleet will be confused and disorganized, Frank said. That's a big if, Olivia replied. Their ships slipped away from Earth, using a new stealth technology that hid them from the harvester's sensors. Meanwhile, Richard Clark made a breakthrough. Working with historians from multiple worlds, he found matching stories in ancient texts. They all described a weapon of pure fire that had driven away the darkness between stars. "It's not literal fire," explained a Quarian scientist. "The ancient texts describe something that burns without consuming, like energy in its purest form." Lieutenant Ross joined the research team. The harvesters feed on energy, but what if there's a type of energy they can't absorb? Something that harms them instead. On the outer defense line, the first wave of the main harvester armada arrived. Thousands of ships, from small scouts to massive carriers, filled the space around Neptune's orbit. The Allied fleet engaged them immediately. Kinetic weapons proved effective against individual ships, but there were simply too many harvesters. "Fall back to secondary positions," ordered the Xeraxian commander. "Draw them toward the minefields." The Allies had placed millions of small explosive devices in the space between Neptune and Earth. As the harvester ships advanced, they triggered these mines, causing significant damage. But still they came. Henry Douglas broadcast from the front lines, his face grim but determined. "The largest space battle in galactic history is underway," he reported. "Ships from every corner of the galaxy fight side by side against the harvesters." Susan Miller received urgent news from their deep space sensors. "Admiral, we've detected the harvester command vessel. It's 3 times larger than their carriers and protected by hundreds of smaller ships." Wilson studied the data. "That's Olivia's target. Send her the coordinates immediately." Behind enemy lines, Olivia's small fleet received the new information. "That thing is massive," Frank whispered as they saw the command ship on their scanners. "Size doesn't matter if we can deliver our package," Olivia replied. "Prepare for approach. All ships provide cover fire when we drop stealth." On Earth, Lieutenant Ross made a critical discovery. Looking through Earth's oldest archaeological records, he found cave paintings from over 50,000 years ago. They showed humans wielding weapons that emitted strange light against tentacled creatures from the sky. "We faced them before," he told Admiral Wilson. "And we beat them with some kind of energy weapon." "But what kind of energy harms creatures that feed on energy?" Wilson asked. A Quarian scientist stepped forward. "There's one form of energy that exists in our oldest technologies, but was abandoned as dangerous: quantum resonance waves." "Could we recreate this weapon?" Susan asked. "Yes," the scientist replied. "But we would need to convert Earth's entire power grid to generate enough energy." As they spoke, the main harvester fleet broke through the outer defenses. Hundreds of Allied ships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining defenders fell back to Earth orbit, where the final stand would take place. The fate of all life in the galaxy now rested on 2 desperate plans: Captain Bennett's mission and the race to build an ancient weapon that might not even work. The sky above Earth filled with thousands of ships. The harvester armada had arrived, their massive vessels casting shadows over the planet below. The final battle had begun. Admiral Wilson watched from the command center as Allied ships fought desperately against overwhelming numbers. The planetary defense grid fired continuously, destroying dozens of harvester vessels, but more kept coming. "We can't hold them much longer," reported the Xeraxian commander. "Our ships are being overwhelmed." Susan Miller worked with engineers from 17 species to complete the quantum resonance weapon. They had converted power plants across Earth to feed energy into a single massive transmitter. "We need another 30 minutes, she told Wilson. "We might not have 5, he replied grimly. Behind enemy lines, Captain Olivia Bennett's small fleet approached the harvester command ship. They had lost 3 vessels already, but the remaining 5 continued their mission. "Drop stealth on my mark," Olivia ordered. "Remember, we only need 1 ship to reach the target." Lieutenant Frank Martinez prepared the disruption device. "Ready, Captain." "Mark." Their ships appeared suddenly in the midst of the harvester escort fleet. The enemy vessels reacted immediately, sending out purple energy tentacles to capture them. All ships, evasive maneuvers, Olivia shouted. Provide cover fire. 4 ships scattered in different directions, drawing away the defenders. Olivia's vessel made a direct run toward the command ship, a massive structure that pulsed with strange light. They're onto us, Frank warned as enemy fire rocked their ship. Just get us close enough, Olivia replied. Their engines strained as they pushed toward their target. On Earth, Lieutenant Ross made a startling discovery while testing the quantum resonance device. The frequency matches human brainwaves, he told Susan. That's why they fear us. Our minds generate energy they can't absorb. Susan quickly adjusted the weapon settings. We can amplify that frequency with the device. In space, Olivia's ship took heavy damage as it approached the command vessel. Systems failed across the bridge as they made their final approach. We're not going to make it, Frank said as fires broke out around them. Olivia looked at him. Yes, we are. She activated the ship's self-destruct sequence and aimed directly for the command ship's central core. All hands, abandon ship, she ordered. Get to the escape pods now. As crew members raced to evacuate, Olivia and Frank remained at their stations, guiding the failing ship on its final journey. It's been an honor, Lieutenant, she said. Frank nodded. For Earth. Their ship crashed into the Harvester command vessel, detonating the disruption device directly in its core. A blinding flash lit up space as the massive structure shuddered and began to break apart. Across the battlefield, Harvester ships suddenly lost coordination. Their movements became erratic and confused. Now, Admiral Wilson ordered, all ships attack. The Allied fleet surged forward, targeting the disorganized enemy vessels. For the first time, the tide of battle turned in their favor. On Earth, Susan activated the quantum resonance weapon. The massive transmitter sent invisible waves of energy into space, targeting the specific frequency that Lieutenant Ross had identified. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Harvester ships began to convulse as the energy disrupted their systems. Unable to feed on this type of energy, they began to shut down or flee. In the command center, cheers erupted as they watched the enemy retreat. Alien representatives embraced human colleagues in celebration. Admiral Wilson remained focused on the battle reports. Any word from Captain Bennett's ship? A communications officer smiled through tears. Sir, we're receiving signals from escape pods. Lieutenant Martinez reports that Captain Bennett stayed aboard to ensure the mission succeeded. 3 days later, representatives from all 27 species gathered in what remained of the Galactic Council chamber. Ambassador Richard Clark stood before them, no longer an outcast, but a hero. Today marks a new chapter in galactic history, he said. We faced extinction together, and together we survived. The new alliance became permanent, with humans taking a leadership role due to their unique resistance to the Harvesters. Ships from across the galaxy patrolled the outer rim, watching for any sign of the enemy's return. Earth celebrated its heroes. A memorial was built to honor Captain Olivia Bennett and all who had fallen in the battle. Lieutenant Ross led research into the strange connection between human minds and the weapon that had saved them. And far from Earth, in a small medical ship, Captain Bennett opened her eyes. Against all odds, she had survived, rescued from her damaged escape pod by a Quarian vessel. As she looked out at the stars, she knew the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not through conquest or dominance, but by standing as guardians against the darkness.